joke's on you, we still have to put the hood on. So the heat shielding on the hood is definitely touching the top of the engine. Next up, fit the hood. I'm going to start by taking off the heat shielding under the hood and see where that gets us. After that, I might need to start trimming down some of this support bar, whatever the heck it is. That old pug garbage is out, and this is what we're left with. Honestly, it is rusty, but I was expecting substantially worse. Put some tape upside down on top of the valve cover. Now I want to see where it sticks. There's the problem. The hood is off. It's ready to be given a little bit of added clearance via a cutoff wheel at this section right here, which is what we identified as where the valve cover's hitting. She's done. Let's see how it fits. We just went through the first test fit, and it now seems as though this intercooler pipe is the problem. So I'm going to be cutting out this little section here that you can see super well because I used a red marker on red paint. Let's go. And we're done. The hood should be sufficiently clearanced, and I've put some duct tape on top of the valve cover so that in case anything is rubbing, hopefully it doesn't scratch the enamel coating. It's time to test fit the hood again.
So theatrical.
Ta-da! Fit hood. Done. We're gonna go for a drive. All right.
New car scent, really?
Hi. It's the irony.
Did you eat this?
No. And the new car scent can go as well. Safety first. Oh god, the seatbelt needs to be cleaned.
They're fucking nasty.
Yeah.
I feel gross right now. I'm very uncomfortable.
This feels surreal. It's the first time the car's on the street. We don't have headlights or turn signals.
Watch out for pedestrians.
Yep. But, oh, the coolant temp gauge is working. Oh, this is so cool. So we do need to keep an eye on the coolant temps because right now the radiator is not running with any fans. But we hit boost earlier and I heard the turbo flutter. It's majestic. So we also don't have a tach right now, but the speedometer's working. So this was first test with the speedo. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but it's working. Here's the post shakedown inspection. First of all, this boost coupler popped. Now there's no bead roll on this right now, so it makes sense that it would have popped. It's still a bit of a bummer and kind of explains why it sounded like it was running a little bit richer near the end of that drive. And the other thing is this tape seems to have been scuffed up a little bit. And if we look at the top of the hood, we see exactly where we're needing to clearance a little bit more. So that's going to be the next tasks. One more thing I hadn't yet validated was if the alternator is actually working. So I have a ground over here, multimeter, and the positive breakout that I installed for the battery relocation. Oh dear, that is very, very low voltage. I don't think the alternator is working. Genius me had forgotten to plug in this connector. So I think that's probably why the alternator wasn't charging the battery. I'm going to retest it right now. The moment of truth. 14 volts, heck yes. Alternator works. With the car now officially being capable of going onto the road, our task list has moved onto the dash. First thing on the menu for today. Wire the tach. Now, I noticed during yesterday's drive that the tach wasn't working. Not the first time I've noticed that. And after reading online, I found out that the tach signal strength coming from the S13 ECU isn't strong enough for the S12 gauge cluster. It's expecting, I think, a 12 volt signal, and the ECU sending 5 volts. So we've built a solution for that. A good place to get a strong pulse every time a spark plug fires is from the igniter chip. 4 wires. So I've created this little harness that has 4 wires that I'm going to splice in right here. And then on the other end, I have this little bit. There are 4 diodes in here. That's going to prevent the signal from one spark plug getting to the other spark plugs and causing misfires. And then this end is going to go straight to the RPM gauge. Everything's all wired up, albeit unshielded, and connected on the inside of the car. Let's see if we now have an RPM gauge. I've been trying to figure out the RPM gauge, and honestly, it has defeated me. Taking a look over here, the tach signal is supposed to be a blue and white cable, at least according to some wiring guides I've been looking at for KA swaps. Now, I don't know if it's this blue and white or if it's this blue and white, but I ran a scrap piece of wire to both of them from the igniter signals, and I wasn't able to get anything. Honestly, if you've done an RPM gauge on an older car to something with a modern ECU, or if you have any S12 knowledge, I would really appreciate it. Anything down in the comments would help. Thank you. Wire tach, our first failed task. It's going into the glove compartment. Join exhaust is next. So what does join exhaust actually mean? Let's take a look. Let's try to get the camera to focus. The dump pipe from the turbo is currently being held onto the exhaust line via that red C-clamp. Obviously, that's not a permanent solution. So we went to Canadian Tire, got some exhaust parts, and I'm hoping I can piece something together that will get it connected properly. Specifically, 1 7/8, 2-inch, and a 2-inch flex pipe. Do we think I may have been running a little bit rich with a slight exhaust leak? Haha. Hey, look at that. The exhaust is bolted and there are no C-clamps. You can see under the car, it's also connected. We have an exhaust line. There's very likely still going to be a bit of a leak somewhere, but I'm going to get new gaskets, get that all fixed up, and it was quite a simple fix. For demonstration purposes, we have the dump pipe off the old CA18. So there's this little indented portion right on the inside here, and essentially on the S13 engine, the SR20, that section seemed to be narrower than what it is on this dump pipe. The other thing is that the studs are longer on this one than they are on the other one. So what I did was, there was a section of pipe coming in here that had a little ridge around it, and another section of pipe that stuck out a little bit further. I cut off that extra section and I just ground down that ridge. That way the clamping portion, I don't even know what you call it, was able to fit a little bit higher up, and I could actually get nuts on the studs. And it was able to sit just a little bit further into the dump pipe, so everything was able to connect. Join exhaust. Done. Hi, Val. Our next task will be build upper radiator mounts. Now, obviously, with the in-bay intercooler setup, the radiator sits farther back, and these just aren't going to cut it. So, I'm going back to the trusty old rusted bed frame. I'm going to cut off little bits of it, bend them so that they sit nicely, I guess. Weld the old radiator mounts onto the bed frame, and just bolt it in right there. To compensate for these past their prime grommets, add a little bit of fuel hose. Much better. Weld needs to be cleaned, but that's not looking half bad. And then there were 2. This isn't gonna work. That's better. Do you like apples? How do you like them apples? The upper radiator mounts are done. self-tappers over here, that little piece of fuel hose, and not sure if you'll be able to see it, but there is a gap that is significant enough to handle vibration between the radiator and the intercooler. That was the last thing to get the car mechanically sound. That means the car can now be driven back into the city from the cottage, which means it won't just be weekends that I get to work on this thing. I'm very, very excited for that. Now, there's still quite a bit to do. Obviously, the headlights aren't in yet. The front fender on the driver's side is still off. But this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. Build up a radiator mounts.
I had nothing to do with this. Done.
And we're going for a drive.